Hello there. So Nigel Farage wants another referendum. He must be getting bored or concerned about where the UK is now headed, because Nigel Farage wants a new referendum. But he won, you say, so why does he want another one? Well, yes, he led the 2016 EU referendum winning side, but now his sights are set on us, the poor saps who'll have to pay for it all, having a referendum on our government's net zero policy. Yes, the Telegraph's Christopher Hope reports that Farage told him that he's in quiet negotiations with donors with a view to launching a campaign to force the government to hold a referendum on the plans for the country to achieve net zero carbon emissions by a set date. And Hope says that Farage called these plans profoundly unconservative, and that's conservative with a big C, by the way. And my reading of this is that there are some big donors waiting in the wings ready to finance a net zero referendum campaign, and there are already rumours of rallies later in the year. And the reason Farage is doing this is because he can't trust MPs to get it right, says Hope. Now the question is, can he pull this one off? Well, given his past track record in these things, he could. If there's a relatively level playing field, that is. And he's put decades into politics and put his head far enough above the parapet enough times to have the public awareness to take this on. He's now a political big hitter and can attract the money, the backing, the following and the media attention. And he is managing to shake off that old image of him being a one-trick Brexit pony. He has played his part via his slots on GB News to push the case for the NHS 100k to retain their jobs, for example, a battle that might be won very shortly. Now, the reason we had an EU referendum was because although it was successfully cornered by UKIP and Farage, the Cameron government thought that the result was always going to be no to leaving the European Union. He felt quite safe in holding it. And the case for the NHS 100k will probably be won more by the dread of witnessing an almost immediate collapse of the NHS if managers are forced to sack 80 to 100,000 of its workers. But net zero? The last thing the government will want to see is a national and heated debate on that particular subject. Because net zero means big changes, massive changes in fact. Changes that the people of the UK will have imposed on them over the next few years, while the big polluters around the rest of the planet get on with cheap business as usual. And making the case for the UK to go into a phase of self-harm that will be of no benefit as other nations push carbon into the atmosphere on our behalf will not be an easy case to make. But the government, as ever, has some distinct advantages. Number one is that just like Brexit, this would be marketed as a battle of the generations. The young progressive cycling eco-warriors versus the old fossils intent on burning fossil fuels. Number two is the government nudge unit, and we've seen what that can do. To not so much change public opinion as changing the public's behaviour through scaremongering. And the psychologists involved now have a huge database on this gathered over the 2 years of the pandemic. Number three is social media. One assumes big tech, or at least those at the top of big tech, will be four square behind net zero. And pushing that as an experiment in the UK would be a valuable exercise for them and their techniques, with one of their most powerful techniques being that of cancellation. Were Farage to start pushing this net zero referendum on the likes of Twitter or Facebook, his survival on those platforms might be measured in days rather than weeks or months. Then fourth, there are the advertisers. those on the opposing side to Nigel will start a relentless campaign to target anyone who advertises anything Farage, from GB News to YouTube. And fifth, don't forget the fifth column, the mainstream media. They hate Farage with a passion because of Brexit and would be more than happy to see him cancelled and out of the sight of the public. Be in no doubt. And you could expect to see the media trying to put Farage in the same frame as the Nutters. Continual reference to Farage alongside images and talk about Jeremy Corbyn's brother, Piers, for example. There would be an intense media hunt for Nutters. Now, social media has already been engaged in cancelling the deniers, so stepping that campaign up would be a very easy thing for them to do. And it won't matter how those wanting to frame having a referendum present their case, it will be framed by the government, mass media, social media, and those with vested interests as people making the case to destroy the planet. So anyone talking about this on social media will see those false information warnings plastered all over their posts, or find they are talking to themselves behind the wall of a shadow ban. Remember, social media did switch off a US president's publicity feed. Then sixth, there are the government experts. The UK public has now become extremely accustomed to seeing government scientists being wheeled out in front of us to tell us all how it is. The science is settled, we will be told. And this, in tandem with the aforementioned nudge unit, will be a very powerful weapon in the government's toolkit. But unlike the pandemic, there will be no need to achieve 100% coverage and compliance, or as close to it as they can get. No, only one vote above 50% is required for this one. Now, Nigel Farage might be looking to put this pledge within his Reform UK manifesto for the next general election, which is due in May 2024, in the hope of getting a sufficient number of MPs into the Commons to sway the net zero debate, or at least hold that threat over the heads of the two main parties. But just looking back at what I've already said, you can work out what the other parties would do to fight Farage off. Now, many people would argue that the people of the UK have the right to make their own choice in this. But now consider the last 18 months and how close we came to losing all choice in one certain area of our lives, and how willing many people were to try and force their choice on those who disagreed with them. We are dangerously near to being a society where demanding choice in anything is viewed as being in denial of a government view, therefore dangerous to the country's well-being. Then there are the unforeseen consequences. The SNP, for example, would use a net zero referendum to push their demand for an Indie Ref too. And what damage would it do to the cohesiveness of the UK if Scotland voted for net zero and England didn't, for example? And finally, should Farage win the day and force the government to hold a referendum on this issue, you can bet your bottom dollar that this would be the first referendum where the under-18s were allowed to participate. Yes, they would be allowed to vote on this. It would only be a question if it went down to 16 or even down to 14, on the premise that it's their future we're talking about. And of course this issue would factor highly in the education curriculum, wouldn't it? The dice would be loaded in favour of the government right the way down the line. Unless Farage was the Prime Minister, of course. So what's your opinion on Farage calling for a net zero referendum? Please like and comment below. Please subscribe and like this video, buy a mug and support me on Patreon or PayPal, and thank you for watching.